Hey YouTube, what's up? Dr. T here in St. Petersburg, Florida. So on to final part 3 of the short history of Bitcoin.
And companies that are involved in Bitcoin can be regulated, but the underlying core system, the technology, it is beyond the reach of any regulatory scheme, just by nature of it being based on cryptography and mathematics and peer-to-peer networks. So it's really, there's nothing much that a government can do except to try not to cause more damage. We'll see how this plays out. It's going to be very interesting.
It doesn't matter whether the government wants to regulate it or not. Ultimately, there'll be another form of Bitcoin or something else the next day. It makes no difference. They can't. This is something they can't control, and it's the future. Why fight it?
There are a lot of different ways Bitcoin could succeed. I mean, my job as the core developer is to kind of concentrate on the core code and make sure the Bitcoin network keeps reliably processing transactions. And then to kind of be agnostic about how Bitcoin succeeds.
In 10 years, Bitcoin is likely to be gone simply because most things that are new tend to fail. So everyone who gets into this needs to understand that it could just disappear tomorrow and go away. But with that realization, if it has not fallen apart and it actually continues to work and continues to grow, it will have taken over much of the world's financial system. It will have changed everything about the way people move money, how they hold money, how they perceive value, what their relationships are with their government and with merchants and with each other. There's going to be amazing new ways that people use money that people can't even imagine now, just as when the internet came out, people couldn't imagine all the different things that people do. So it would be foolish to try to predict exactly what will happen, other than to say it will be very, very intense shift. And when people realize what happened over the course of so small a time, they'll look back and realize, wow, like that should have all been very obvious.
I think it is the protocol for money on the internet. So in 20 years, when computers trade value with each other for whatever reason, they'll use Bitcoin or its successor to do that. It'll be just like right now, very rarely does any of our technology trade value. But in 20 or 30 years, it'll happen all the time. You'll log on and you'll be able to pay a little more for faster internet. There's just 100 ways that computers will be transmitting value to each other all the time. So they'll use Bitcoin for that.
If it does take off, I suspect that it will become invisible to consumers. And in the same way that people don't think about payment systems in general, Bitcoin will be invisible and transparent to them, and so they'll just know that they can pay to pay a penny to read an article on their tablet, and they won't even be thinking about it as Bitcoin because Bitcoin will all be invisible to them in the background. It's going to be an infrastructure system.
I think we're going to go through a phase where there's more centralization because there's kind of a natural monopoly that will happen with exchanges. But then I believe that eventually we're going to grow out of that and the Bitcoin economy will sustain itself. And there's really very little friction because it's really designed to be this decentralized peer-to-peer currency. And, I have no special ability to predict the future, so I might be wrong.
While Bitcoin has the potential to be a subversive currency, and I do applaud that, it also can be strictly bourgeois. Ma and Pa next door can use Bitcoin. They use dollars now. It's not like all throughout human history we've been using paper currency. All sorts of things have been used as currency throughout time. It's not as if the dollar was handed down. Moses came down and said, "Here, we must use this dollar." We just have to open up the doors of the way people think about money.
I do think that this new era of math-based currencies will find whatever the problem was with Bitcoin and will patch it, perhaps in a Litecoin or Bitcoin 2.0. We'll find a way to continue to serve the market needs and what the market demands.
I think Bitcoin will grow to something where maybe 5% of people's wealth will be held in Bitcoin, and hopefully it represents the working capital that a lot of businesses use to enter and not have to leave this frictionless payment world. That doesn't mean 100% of your assets have to be in it, but whatever sort of lubricates the transactions that you're doing on a daily basis as a business.
Bitcoin might succeed someplace else in the world. Maybe a country like Zimbabwe that recently saw hyperinflation. Maybe they'll decide instead of using the US dollar as our currency, which they're doing now, maybe a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin would make sense as their national currency. You know, that's a possibility. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, my job is to concentrate on making it possible so any of those great things can happen. And I think it's going to be really interesting in the next 5 years to see what does happen.
Hopefully they'll appreciate the risks that we're taking to make it happen in the early days, because most people just laugh at it right now.